Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. Oh, do we have a movie to talk about today? I mean, you might have an idea where I'm going based on my attire, but I'm stoked because I've only talked about this movie just briefly in my little 1 minute, like right out the theater review. If you want no spoilers and just a vibe of how I felt about the movie and whether or not you should go see it, you can check that out right there. But now I'm getting ready to talk about this thing in the kind of detail I want to talk about it because I didn't have time yesterday because I saw it twice. That's right, I went and saw it at 2. I did my 1 minuter. I went back out and saw it at 7 with my buddy Nico. I came home. I crashed. I was like, you know what? We'll get the 1 minuter up. Once that's there, I'm pass out. I'm going to get up refreshed, energized, ready to talk about this movie correctly. The sun is shining. It's a gorgeous day out. I don't want to waste any more time because I want to get outside. I got work tonight, not today, so that's a nice little plus for me. But what are we talking about? If you don't know, why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And if you've watched my 1 minute, I said that Phil Lord and Chris Miller have successfully delivered the 2 greatest comic book movies of all time. Into the Spider-Verse, I figured there'd be nothing that could ever touch that movie. It is the most perfect comic book visual medium entity I've ever seen in my life. And leave it to Lord and Miller, man, to go and break your brain even harder the second time and make a movie that's right there. Right now, after sleeping on it and seeing it twice, I do give the original the edge just because it's a more complete movie. And this might be a mild spoiler for you guys, but technically, when this was announced, I think even the initial trailer, it said, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. This was always designed to be a 2-part story. And while both Miles and Gwen, which we'll talk about, because Gwen has so much more story here, and it's one of the reasons I like this movie, but it's like right there. While they have complete arcs for this movie, this is very much like Infinity War. It's a piece of a story. It's not the whole thing. And I don't think I can rightly put this or Part 2 above the original right now, just because that story is incomplete. But man, oh man, do Lord and Miller and their team up the ante everywhere in this movie. I mean, I told you, they broke my brain, man. Like, everything for me on this movie is firing at an even higher cylinder than the first one. I think that this is a more mature movie. This is a movie where you have a creative team that definitely learned things and then took those things that they learned, applied it here, and improved stuff. And it's mind-blowing. So I'm going to start with Phil Lord and Chris Miller because they're our 2 main producers, and they are our 2 main writers along with David Callaham. And the story here, like I said, this is a more mature story, even though we're only like a year and a half past the first one, right? Miles is 15 now. And it's one of these things where, as a 15-year-old, I remember being 15, you really feel like you're an adult and you want to go on and take those more adult type things on and throw in being a superhero on top of that. Miles is at a place where he's kind of on top of the world, man. He's figuring things out. And then when he gets kind of pulled into this multiverse story that they've created, he really has to switch gears and become more mature because he's going up against people that are older and more seasoned and experienced than him. And, similarly to that first one, it's kind of fun to see Miles react to things as he's learning, but at this point, he's taking it in a much different way. There's a bigger confidence. He knows what he's doing now. And that's one of the things that I love about Miles in this movie, and from a story perspective, is that while he's there, like, there's still so much more to learn, and by the time you get to the end of the movie, Miles has gone on an arc where he's grown even more, and he is hopefully becoming the hero that he's going to need to be in order to pull the things off that he wants to pull off come Part 2. And that's one of the things. I mean, it's not Part 2. I think it's Beyond the Spider-Verse is what the next one is called. But that's one of the things that I love about Miles is, like, he is still a kid, even if he feels like he's more adult, and getting thrown into this kind of situation, you just see him mature and react a lot faster and in a more savvy way because of the things he learned from the first one. And how they play with that throughout the movie is fantastic. Now, counter that with Gwen, and this is one of the things that I love. Similarly to the first movie, Lord Miller and Callaham don't start with Miles. And this is a mild spoiler, I guess, but we open with Gwen, and they give Gwen so much more story. And I am a massive Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider fan. I love that character, and what Hailee Steinfeld has done with her is just so wonderful. So to see her get more story here was great, and it's the same thing. It's like we get to learn more about stuff from her in the first, right? I think the first movie does a really good job of establishing all of the spider people, but doesn't really break into their stories or their personal stories. And that's the thing that we get with Spider-Gwen this time that I absolutely loved, and where you start getting to learn where she is in her world and why and how she gets pulled into this multiverse story and you know, back to Miles. And the journey that she goes on, very similarly to Miles. While it is only a part of the story, it's a full, complete arc. You know, Gwen grows up a lot and matures a lot as a superhero. And you saw her in that first one. She was already the more seasoned and mature superhero when she met Miles. So now, a year and a half later, the things that are going on with her, I just think are really fleshed out well by these guys. And when you add in the multiversal aspect and the Miguel O'Hara of it all, I love the way that Lord Miller and Callaham handle the multiverse and what this story is, how they tee up your main villain, and how you start to understand why, from the trailers, Miguel is chasing Miles. And that's one of the things that I love the most, is that linchpin element, why Miguel is after Miles and trying to stop Miles from doing things, is one of the most fascinating and well done pieces of this story. And how they play with the multiverse stuff, I mean, I said it in my immediate review, Kevin Feige and Marvel need to be paying attention to what Lord Miller and Callaham are doing with this multiverse stuff, because one of the things I love about this movie is it's 2.5 hours. And some people are going to go, that's really, really long for an animated film. It's the longest animated film, I believe, of all time. And I appreciate that it's 2.5 hours, because this is a huge story. Like, when you start getting into what's going on in the multiverse and what's happening, it's a big story. And Lord Miller and Callaham take their time. They don't rush anything. Everything in this movie builds perfectly, and by the time you get to the end, you have you're sitting there, and they literally set it up in a way where it's like it's a 2.5 hour movie where people might go, it's too long, but because of how it ends, you're like, I need 2.5 more hours right now. Like, I need that next movie ASAP. And it's the genius of going long, because it allows them to tell the story correctly, give you a satisfying conclusion for your character arcs, but leave your audience going, wait, that's where we're gonna stop? And it's phenomenal. And the characters that they choose to highlight in this movie, specifically Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, we're going to talk about Daniel Kaluuya and all of the performances here, because they're phenomenal, but how they handled Hobie was just, anybody who's a Spider-Punk fan, you're gonna geek out hard. And I think it's only the tip of the iceberg for that character, which is super, super exciting. Obviously, I said the Miguel O'Hara stuff I really dug. The Spider-Woman stuff, when you're talking about Jessica Drew, I thought that stuff is really well handled. And that's the thing, where it's like, the new characters get a similar treatment to the new characters in the first movie, where we get just enough of them where you understand the characters a little bit, what their motivations are, but you're more curious about the characters. And that's something that I would love to see expanded in Beyond the Spider-Verse, is more for Hobie, more for Jessica, because those characters are fascinating and you love those characters. And I mean, it doesn't matter who they pick out in this one. I mean, whether it's Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider, fantastic stuff there, and again, another fan favorite where you get it and you're just like, oh, they nailed that stuff. Like I said, I mean, we already talked about Hobie, but then you get to spider characters that I'm not familiar with, like Spider-Man India. So freaking fun, man. And like I said, how they're introduced, and you want to spend more time with them. Hopefully we will come beyond. So when you look at the writing, I mean, you do the same stuff you do in the last movie. You're juggling even more spider people, and then it's like you have these really, really well complete arcs for your two main characters and a story that's like, I want more. And then you flip this thing over to the direction and the animation. What Joaquim dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson do with this movie visually, like, oh man. I mean, if you thought the first Spider-Verse animation was dope, your brain is going, like, you're not going to even be able to compute what you're watching. I mean, this is literal art. We're watching literal art. And the thing that I love, and we kind of saw a bit of this in the previews, is every universe has a different kind of vibe to its animation. And how it plays with those things and utilizes that multiversal concept. Like, when we get, into the multiverse and we're seeing all of the stuff that we're seeing, all the different spider people and all the different villains that they have captured, how they choose to handle all that stuff was fascinating. And the different art styles that they use throughout the movie, whether they're meshing with other styles, they're just out on their own, the blending and the mixing and changing of the art styles was like watching a living, breathing comic book. I mean, every comic has a different artist and colorist and writer, and there's a different vibe to all these characters, and all these characters have been seen in so many different ways, and the animation pays tribute to all of that. And then, like I said, you're literally looking at works of art sometimes. And the thing that I thought was really cool was that they found a way to have the animation itself, take out the story and what's happening on screen, and just the animation itself was able to add emotion, was able to build and do things where you're just like, I can't believe it what I'm looking at. I mean, specifically Spider-Gwen, like Gwen Stacy's universe, when we're there, how the art, I mean, it's literal art, reflects her emotions at times. It's one of those things that makes this movie worthwhile seeing over and over and over again. Because, like, just seeing it 2 times back to back yesterday, I was picking up on more stuff because I now know the movie. I can start looking at all the other things, and not let alone just the amount of spider people in this movie. But the action is insane. How they utilize a character like Spot. The Spot was so cool, man. Like, this was like a character you figure is gonna be a throwaway. And then what you're able to do with that character is so cool, man. And the multiverse and how that concept works. And that's another thing, again, like with Lord Miller and Callaham, how they utilize the multiverse. That's the one thing in Marvel. Spider-Man's always kind of had the multiverse in its back pocket. I've always said DC is the multiverse. Like, you went there for multiverse stories. Spider-Man is the other place that does this. And now in 2 outings, both with No Way Home and these 2 Spider-Verse movies, specifically this one, Sony is handling this stuff unbelievably. And the way that the storytelling is working and how they do things. I mean, they talk about canon in the movie, spoilers, and how they utilize canon is so freaking cool, but it's also smart and genius. And that's the one thing I love the most about this movie before we get to the performances, is that anything this movie does, anything that it tweaks or changes from the first one or tries differently, adds, enhances, and works, and just builds something that, like, you sit there and you just marvel at it. Like I said, it's a no-doubter top 2 comic book movie of all time, with the first Spider-Verse being the other one. And I think when we get the second part, much like Infinity War got even better when we got Endgame, I think Beyond is going to do the same thing for Across. But the other thing, obviously, besides just the story and the animation and the direction of the movie and how things look and feel and how you utilize action and different set pieces, even though villains aren't always involved, like I said, the Miguel O'Hara piece is really interesting. But put all that stuff aside and let's talk about the people who are bringing these characters to life with their voices. And obviously, Shameik Moore, I love him. I mean, he's so good. And to see how he, from a voice perspective, has grown up in a year and a half with the character, just from having the repetitions of the first movie, you can feel that he's more comfortable. Same goes for Hailee Steinfeld, and Jake Johnson. Like all the people who come back here, they've got a more comfortability with these characters, and you feel it. But just the way that Moore kind of changes Miles a little bit, and just the approach, both mentally and how he says things, I really, really dug it. And getting to see how he bounces off Hailee Steinfeld with Gwen Stacy, or how he bounces off specifically in this one a little bit more so than his dad, I think in the first one. He really gets to bounce off Rio a lot. Rio has a really solid piece in this movie, and Luna Lauren Velez again is wonderful, and that it really feels like a mom and a son when they're interacting. And I think a lot of that has to do again with the familiarity and just the growth as actors with these characters. But Shameik Moore is fantastic. You love everything that he does with Miles, and he really, he goes to places emotionally with Miles that I just think work so well. And when you're really talking about the emotional stuff, Hailee Steinfeld, like I said, the stuff where they go to with Gwen and what's happening with her, I mean, her and Shameik Moore are handling some really tough things for these characters, and their voice performance reflects that. And she's just excellent. I mean, she really is Gwen Stacy, and I hope we just get more and more for these characters and let these actors get to spend more time with them, because you can feel how they've upgraded, and she's absolutely wonderful, and I'm so happy that she got even more to work with here. And Steinfeld really does show how good of an actor she is, even if she isn't physically on screen. And watching her grow over the last 4 or 5 years as an actor has been a lot of fun. But she's absolutely fantastic. Jake Johnson coming back as Peter B. Parker. It's one of these things where the movie sets itself up for so many cheer-worthy moments throughout it. And when Peter B. Parker shows up, man, do you get so stoked. And there's a familiarity to that character, and where they take Peter B. Parker this time storyline-wise, while he's not front and center, so to speak, right? Gwen is more front and center, and he's kind of secondary. He's more supporting here. Everything that they're doing with Spider-Man is phenomenal, specifically how his personal life is impacting his superhero life. And Johnson, again, it's just like you can feel that these actors have been with these characters longer, and I loved everything they did with Peter B. Parker. Oscar Isaac is one of the best actors in the world, and no shock here, his performance as Miguel O'Hara is wonderful. There's a sincerity and there's a pain to Miguel that few people, I think, could bring to the screen through just their voice the way Oscar Isaac does here. He's absolutely fantastic. He's ferocious, and again, it's like a character where we get a bunch of him, yet I can see the heights being so much higher with where you go. I feel like we got teases for Miguel's, Spider-Man 2099 that could really, this is a very Infinity War vibe where you're doing a lot of story building and laying a lot of foundation to set up what's probably going to be even crazier, more insane action and animation come the next movie. And I'm really, really excited to see where Isaac takes Miguel O'Hara. Issa Rae, great. Again, small role, but really does have a sincerity and a tone to her voice that, when Gwen meets her, she does something right away, and I totally jive with it, because what Issa Rae is doing performance-wise just immediately makes you feel that way, and then what's actually going on with the character. She's just a badass, man, and Issa Rae definitely brings that on. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. Obviously, we didn't touch on Brian Tyree Henry, but back as Jefferson Davis, smaller role this time, but again, I think we're teeing him up for some really big things, and that emotional connection to Miles. He gets one moment where I was like, "Ooh, Brian Tyree Henry, you are so good." And I hope there's even more for Jefferson come beyond. But he's fantastic. Like I said, Luna Lauren Velez does a great job. And I think there is, you really feel the bond between her and Shameik Moore as actors when Miles and Rio are on screen. And the emotional stuff that hit in the first one with Jefferson is really hitting here with Luna and her story with Miles. And where that goes just really, really worked well. Then we're getting into some of the other characters that pop up in this movie. And like I said, Daniel Kaluuya as Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk. So freaking cool. Some of the dopest animation in the movie. How they utilize Hobie and how he's animated, is just so reflective of Kaluuya's performance, and it's a stroke of genius when you see what they do with the character. And again, we got a taste of Hobie. I can't wait to get even more, and I hope we get more of his story in Beyond, because Kaluuya was just out here doing work, man, and you could just tell how much fun he was having with the character, and it's what you want, man, because he's a character that we should be having fun with, and he really, I think, from a tone, understood the Hobie Brown assignment and just knocked it out of the ballpark, which was huge because I love me some Hobie Brown. So cool to see, like I said, see him come to life, and then to animate him the way that they animate him was so punk rock, man. Andy Samberg is that Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. How they utilize this character is just perfect for Samberg, and I thought he absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. Karan Soni, who plays Spider-Man India, so freaking cool, and he's having so much fun, and that's what that character is supposed to be, and it's reflected in the voice work, and I just absolutely loved him. And Amandla Stenberg, who plays Margo Kess. She is Spider-Bite. Doesn't have a ton to do, but the character is really, really dope, and I hope we get even more for her. But I thought what she did with the character and just the immediate chemistry that she had with Shameik Moore was awesome and played so well in the movie. And really, everybody that's in this movie that pops up is fantastic. And last but certainly not least, and this is a character I can't wait to see what we get with in Beyond, but Jason Schwartzman as Jonathan owned the spot. Like I said, just so freaking cool character-wise. I love the design and the execution of how they play with that character and what that character means to the story. Like I said, everything they do in this movie is driven by a story choice, and that's what makes it so great and so phenomenal as a movie, let alone a comic book movie, is anything that they do, anything they change, anything that they try, anything that we haven't seen before, it is all driven by story choices, and it just pops. So, I mean, this movie, like I said, it broke my brain, and I cannot wait for Beyond the Spider-Verse. I hope it's next year. I want to say they did these back-to-back, so hopefully we're not having to wait multiple years to get to Beyond, because I can't wait that long. But that's it. That's everything I got to say that is non-spoiler-y type talk. So let's get the C-Maniacs up. Like I said, man, this is just, it's another perfect comic book movie, and everything you want is here. The story is strong, and it is more mature. It is grown. It's like while we see how we see these characters have grown in a year and a half in the Spider-Verse time, we also see how Lord and Miller and Callaham have grown from a writing standpoint in what they're doing here. And you feel that in the story, and it is big, and it's massive, and they take huge swings. And for me, everything hits perfectly, and they tee you up for a second part that, much like Infinity War did. You cannot wait for part 2, and that's just fantastic when you look at what Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, Justin K. Thompson do on the direction side, and what we get with the animation this time around. I mean, we're seeing things that I've never seen before in an animated film, and there are so many individual stills. I could fill my entire apartment with stills from this movie because it is literal living artwork. And even though it looks beautiful, all of those artsy and artistic creative decisions, again, are driven by story choices. They impact the story. They impact the emotion of what's going on. And when you live in a world like the comic book world, different artists get all of these characters, and to see different iterations of them happening on screen and to see it blend so seamlessly, I mean, it was mind-blowing. And the performances just match everything else that you're getting in this. Shameik Moore, Hailee Steinfeld, Jake Johnson, all coming back, all absolutely phenomenal again, and you can feel and see how they've all grown with these characters, and I was so glad that Gwen got more story. Then you throw in Oscar Isaac, Issa Rae, Daniel Kaluuya, Andy Samberg, Karan Soni, Jason Schwartzman, Amandla Stenberg. I mean, all of the new players here are phenomenal. And then Brian Tyree Henry and Luna Laura Velez, they're the perfect parental characters to have in these movies. And like I said, just where you go from both a Miles story, a Gwen story, and then just an overall Spider-Man story. Like how they use the multiverse, it was just genius. It was perfection. It might be a better movie than the first, but it's not complete. So I'm gonna withhold judgment, but it's not gonna stop me from saying that this is a 5 out of 5 movie, man. Like I said, this is pure perfection. I mean, it's comic art and just art in and of itself come to life with a story that matches, man. It's so damn good. Get out there this weekend and see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. If you are a Spider-Man fan, you're a comic book fan, hell, if you're an animation fan or just a movie fan, this thing is a huge home run. That's it. I'm gonna shut up. I've been talking forever. I told you we had a movie to talk about today, but I appreciate you guys riding with me on this one. I hope you appreciate the thoughts, and now I want to know yours, man. What did you think of Spider-Man Across? I'm so excited, man. I'm hitting things, shaking the camera. What about you? Are you shaking with excitement? What did you think of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? How much did you love it? What did you think of it comparatively to the first one? Like I said, I don't know if I want to say it's better or not, but it definitely upped the game everywhere. Every ante got upped, and did you feel that? Did you see that? Keep it spoiler free, but let me know what you were digging or loving about the movie, and if you had anything that you didn't like, point it out, because I wasn't seeing anything, man. If you haven't seen this movie, are you excited? Are you going? When are you going? How are you watching this movie? I would say IMAX, but biggest screen possible, man. The animation deserves it. But anything that you guys got, man, whether you've seen it or not, just keep it spoiler free and keep it positive and just, I love you guys. Keep it fun up in here. Put all your thoughts, man, down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. You want to be here to see what else I got going on in the month of June. I mean, we got Transformers next week. We've got so many movies coming out. You want to be here for the thoughts. You dig the vibe. You want to show a little love and support. Well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. It's where you can do all those things and hang with a pretty cool group of people, I think. You can do that simply by jumping over there, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. Holy cow, man. Whew. This movie, I'm going to see this like 4 more times, 5 more, I don't know, so many more times, man. But until then, and maybe we'll talk some spoilers, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, you guys are still here. You snuck up on me. You must be looking for more of this guy. Well, I got 2 video options for you, man. Right up here and right over here. And if you want all those C-Man goodies, well, hey, come join the squad right on over there, and I'll catch you on the next one.